The night was quiet, the kind of silence that made even the smallest sound feel loud. The road stretched out empty, covered in a pale silver glow from the twin moons above. A cold wind brushed against the lonely human's face as he walked, his boots crunching softly against the dirt path. He thought he was alone, far from the busy towns and the crowded cities. But then, he heard it. It was not the sound of an animal or the rustle of leaves. It was a voice, weak, trembling, and filled with fear. "Please, human, help us." The voice cried. The man froze. His heart skipped a beat. He looked around but saw nothing, only shadows shifting between the tall trees. The voice came again. Sharper this time, desperate. "They locked my mother in a cage." The human's chest tightened. He had traveled across many places and heard many things, but never had a cry sounded so broken, so helpless. Slowly, he stepped off the path and into the forest. His hand brushed the old knife at his side, the only weapon he carried. The air grew colder, thicker, like it was holding secrets. Then he saw her, a small figure standing between the trees. Her eyes glowed faintly. Not like any human child, her skin was pale blue, marked with strange lines that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. She was trembling, her small hands clutching at her chest. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she stared up at him. "Please, human, help us," she whispered again. The man bent slightly, studying her. She was no older than 8 or 9 in human years. Her clothes were torn, her feet bare. Every bone of her tiny body showed through her skin. She was starving, scared, and yet there was hope in her eyes. Fragile but burning. "Who locked your mother?" the human asked softly, his voice low, careful not to scare her more. She shook her head quickly, looking behind her into the darkness. "Bad men," she whispered. "They came to our home. They took her. They laughed when she cried. They said she was worthless. They locked her in a cage." Her voice cracked and she dropped to her knees. "Please, human. They will hurt her. They will kill her." The human's fists clenched. He was just one man, a traveler who wanted no trouble. But how could he walk away from this? The sight of her small, broken body and the sound of her desperate cry burned into his heart. He knew he could not turn his back. Not tonight. "Take me," he said at last. "Show me where they have your mother." The little alien girl's eyes widened. Her lips trembled. "You will help?" she asked, her voice shaking with fragile hope. "I will try," the human replied. His words were simple, but the weight behind them was strong. She stood, her knees weak, and took his hand. Her fingers were cold, thin as sticks, but she gripped him tightly, like he was the last light in a world of darkness. Together, they moved through the forest. The trees grew denser, the shadows deeper. Every sound made the girl flinch. A distant howl echoed, followed by laughter, rough and cruel. The human felt the girl's hand tighten around his. He kept moving, his eyes sharp, his steps silent. Finally, they reached a clearing. The human stopped, his breath caught in his chest. There, in the middle of the camp, were cages, rusty, dirty cages, meant for animals. But inside one of them, a woman sat, her body slumped, her hair tangled, her skin the same pale blue as the child's but bruised and bloodied, her eyes barely open. She looked weak, broken, but when the little girl whispered, "Mother," her head lifted, the human's jaw tightened, rage burned inside him. The woman raised her hand weakly, her lips moving. He could not hear the words, but he could feel the pain in them. Around the cages were men, rough and cruel, laughing as they drank from metal flasks. Weapons leaned against tree stumps. Firelight flickered across their scarred faces. These were no ordinary men. They were raiders, the kind who took whatever they wanted and crushed whoever stood in their way. The little girl trembled beside him. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Please, human, Please save her." The human knelt, his eyes fixed on the scene, his heart pounded, his mind raced. He was outnumbered, unarmed except for his knife. One wrong move, and both he and the child would be caught. But he could not walk away. Not now, not after hearing that cry. He looked at the child and whispered, "Stay close to me." The night air grew heavy. The firelight crackled in the distance, and in that moment, the human made his choice. He would risk everything for the caged mother, for the trembling child, and for the cry that would not leave his ears. The cry for help had reached him and he had answered. Asterisk, the human crouched low behind the trees, his eyes fixed on the camp. The smell of smoke and sweat drifted through the cold night air. Shadows danced around the cages as the fire cracked and spat. The raiders were loud, their laughter echoing through the forest, but the sound that cut through it all was softer. Weaker, the shallow breathing of the alien mother trapped behind rusty bars. The little girl gripped his sleeve tightly, her small body trembling against him. Her wide, glowing eyes were locked on the cage. "That's her," she whispered. "That's my mother." Her voice broke, and she buried her face into the human's arm. He looked at the cage carefully. The woman inside was slumped forward, her long blue hair falling over her face. Her skin was bruised, covered with ugly marks. Chains bound her thin wrists. She lifted her head slowly, her gaze drifting weakly toward the child. For a moment, her lips curled into a faint smile, but the effort made her cough violently. The human's chest tightened. This was no place for kindness, no place for mercy. And yet, here she was, still trying to smile for her child, even from inside a cage. His hand went to the knife at his side. But he froze. There were too many guards, too many eyes. The raiders laughed louder. One of them kicked at the cage with his boot, making the bars rattle. The mother flinched, but did not cry out. The little girl gasped and dug her nails into the human's sleeve. "They hurt her every night," she whispered, her voice trembling with fury and fear. "They say she will never leave alive." The human clenched his jaw. He knew what kind of men these were. He had seen them in different places. Taking what wasn't theirs, breaking lives for amusement. They were cowards who felt strong only when others were weak. He lowered himself closer to the girl's ear. "Listen," he whispered. "If I go now, I'll be caught before I reach her." The girl's eyes filled with tears, "But she will." "Die if you don't," she pleaded. Her tiny hands shook as she clutched his arm. His heart twisted at her words. He wanted to rush forward, to tear the bars open and carry the woman out, but that would only doom them all. He had to be careful. He had to think. The mother lifted her head again, her tired eyes locked on him. Through the darkness, she had seen him. He could feel it. Her lips moved faintly. He could not hear the words, but he knew what they were. Save her, not herself, not her chains. Just her child. That was what she begged for. The human's throat felt dry. He looked at the girl, then back at the cage. "I will not leave without her," he whispered firmly. His words carried weight. And the little girl stared at him with trembling hope. The raiders shifted. Two of them wandered away into the forest with torches. Another yawned and leaned against a tree. The human studied every move, his mind racing. There was a pattern, a rhythm to their guard. If he timed it right, there might be a chance. But then a loud cry broke through the camp. One of the raiders shouted, pulling something from a sack. It was food-rotten scraps of meat. They threw it at the cage like feeding an animal. The mother didn't move. Her hands stayed limp against the dirt. The raiders jeered. "Not hungry tonight? Or maybe you're just waiting for your little brat to come back." The little girl's eyes widened. She pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. The human pulled her closer into the shadows. His jaw set tighter. Every moment in that camp was cruelty. Every breath the woman took was suffering. He knew he could not wait too long. The longer she stayed in there, the weaker she would become. And the raiders, they would not stop until she was broken. He leaned close to the child again. "Tonight?" he whispered. "We try tonight." The girl nodded quickly, her eyes shining. With tears and hope, she didn't ask how. She didn't ask if it was possible. She just believed. The human moved silently, studying the cages. There was a weak spot near the back where the wood posts of the camp fence met the bars. The locks were heavy, but not impossible. If he could reach them quietly, he might just have a chance. The mother shifted again. Her chains clinking softly, she looked toward the trees. Her tired eyes glimmering faintly. She knew someone was there. She knew help was close. The human pressed a finger to his lips, signaling the child to stay quiet. Then he mouthed the words to the mother, "Wait." She blinked slowly, her lips trembling, but she nodded. The raiders roared with laughter again, striking deep into the night. Their fire burned brighter. But their eyes grew heavier. One by one, they slumped lazily against logs and stumps. Shadows stretched long across the ground. The human waited, his heart steady. His chance was coming. His mind was sharp. His knife was ready. And the alien mother, trapped and broken, sat in silence. Her gaze fixed on him. For the first time in days, there was a spark of hope in her weary eyes. The night deepened. The fire in the raider camp burned lower, throwing long shadows across the ground. Most of the men were half asleep, their heads heavy from drink. The human crouched in the darkness, his breath slow and steady, his hand rested. On the knife at his side, his eyes never left the cage. The little alien girl clung to him. Her small fingers gripped his sleeve tightly. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You won't leave her, right?" He shook his head, his gaze hard. "I won't leave without her," he answered. His voice was quiet, but firm. The child nodded, her glowing eyes filled with fragile hope. He waited, studying the movements of the raiders. A pair of them had wandered off toward the trees, their torches flickering weakly in the distance. Another leaned against a stump, snoring. His chance was here. But it would not last. "Stay here," the human whispered to the girl. She opened her mouth to protest, but he pressed a finger to his lips. "Stay hidden, no matter what." He repeated. The girl's eyes watered, but she nodded slowly. She crouched low, hugging her knees. The human moved. Each step was silent, practiced. He had crossed dangerous places before, but never with stakes like this, never with a child's. Eyes watching him, counting on him, he reached the shadows near the cages. His body pressed against the rough wood of the fence. The alien mother stirred. Her head lifted weakly. Her tired eyes widened when she saw him. Her lips moved, though no sound came. But he knew what she said. "You came." He crouched low, pulling a thin piece of wire from his pocket. It wasn't much, but he had used it before. He slid it into the lock, his hand steady even as his heart pounded. The metal scraped, the lock clicked faintly. But then the mother shook her head. Her lips formed words a gango away. The human frowned, his eyes locked on hers. She was trying to warn him. Her chains rattled softly as she shook her head again. Her eyes darted toward the guards. He turned. Slightly, one of the raiders stirred, rubbing his eyes. He grumbled, then spat into the fire. The human froze, his breath caught. For a moment, he thought he had been seen. But the man only shifted and slumped back again. The mother's eyes were wide with fear. She shook her head once more, mouthing the same words, "Don't risk it." He wanted to argue, but there was no time. He pressed the wire deeper. The lock groaned. Softly, a faint click echoed. His pulse raced. He was close. Suddenly, the little girl's voice broke the silence. "Mother," she whispered from the shadows. The human's heart leaped. His head turned sharply. The sound had been soft, but in The still night, even whispers traveled. One of the raiders shifted, his eyes half open. He sniffed the air, his hand moving toward his weapon. The human pressed against the cage. Whispering harshly, quiet, his eyes darted back toward the child. She had clamped both hands over her mouth, her glowing eyes wide with fear. The lock gave a final click. The door shifted slightly, just enough, his fingers wrapped around the metal, ready to pull it open. But a sharp crack of wood broke the night. A branch snapped, heavy footsteps followed. A guard was returning from the trees, torch in hand. The glow of fire spread across the clearing. Sweeping closer, the human's chest tightened. He pushed the cage door only a little before pulling it shut again. Too risky. If the guards saw an open cage, they would all be doomed. He slipped back into the shadows. Pressing himself flat against the wooden posts, his breath shallow, the torchlight swept across the camp. Washing the cage in orange light, the guard yawned loudly. Scratching his beard, he glanced lazily at the cages. Spitting on the ground, the mother closed her eyes quickly. Pretending to sleep, her body slumped once more. The guard chuckled, muttering something about useless creatures. Then he moved toward the fire. Throwing another log onto the flames, the human exhaled slowly. His muscles were tense. His chance had slipped away for now. He moved back, step by silent step, until he reached the trees. The little girl was there, crouched low, tears streaming down her cheeks. When she saw him, she leaped forward, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Did you free her?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Not yet," he whispered. His voice was steady. But inside his chest, his heart was heavy. "But I will." The girl's tears fell faster. "They will hurt her more. They always do when they hear noise." Her small voice shook with anger and fear. "She cannot last another night." He knelt, gripping her shoulders gently. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I saw her. She is still alive. She is waiting, and I will not let her die in that cage." The child sniffled, her eyes searching his face. Slowly, she nodded, though her hands trembled. He glanced back at the camp, his mind racing. He needed a plan. The first attempt had failed, but he had learned. He knew the guards' movements. He knew the weak spots. The night dragged on. The raiders laughed less and slept more. The fire dimmed. The mother remained in her cage. Silent, unmoving, but her eyes, whenever they opened, looked only toward the trees, toward the place where hope now lived. And in the shadows, the human crouched, his jaw tight, his heart burning with quiet rage. He knew the risk. He knew what failure meant. But he had made a promise. The first attempt had failed, yes, but tomorrow night, he swore, would not. The forest was still, the air heavy with the smell of smoke drifting from the raider camp. The human crouched low, his body tense, his mind replayed the last attempt. The close call, the sound of boots too near. He knew one mistake could cost them everything, but he also knew he could not wait forever. The little alien girl leaned against him, her small hands gripping his sleeve tightly. Her glowing eyes never left the cage where her mother sat, weak and silent. "She is getting worse," the girl whispered, her voice shaking. "Please. Please, human, she cannot last much longer." He nodded, his jaw set firm. His heart burned with quiet determination. He had promised, and promises meant something. He waited until the laughter of the raiders softened, until the fire cracked. Low. Then he moved. The girl gasped softly. "Now?" "Yes, now," he whispered. His eyes scanned the shadows. He guided her behind a fallen log. "Stay here, no matter what." Her lips trembled. "But what if they see you?" "They won't," he said, though even he was not sure, but his voice was calm, steady. Enough to give her courage. She nodded and pressed herself low against the log. The human crept forward, his steps light, his breath steady, He reached the cage again. His fingers brushed the cold bars. The mother stirred weakly, lifting her head. Her tired eyes widened at the sight of him. Her lips formed silent words, but this time she didn't tell him to leave. This time she only stared at him with desperate hope. He pulled the wire from his pocket again, sliding it into the lock. The faint click of metal echoed in his ears. He worked quickly, every sound from the camp making his heart pound harder. The lock shifted, clicked once, then twice. His breath caught. He was close. But then crack, a twig snapped behind him. The human froze. His hand gripped the cage door. His eyes darted toward the sound. A shadow moved, tall and heavy, the glow of firelight reflected off a blade. A raider, awake. The man's eyes narrowed as he stepped closer. His lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Well, well," he muttered. "What do we have here?" The human's pulse thundered in his ears. He yanked the wire free, slipping it back into his pocket. His knife slid into his palm, but he didn't move yet. The raider took another step, raising his torch. The light washed over the human's face, his features now clear. The raider's grin widened. "A thief," he spat. "Or maybe just a fool." The alien mother's chains rattled as she tried to rise. Her weak voice cracked. "No. No." The human stepped back, his knife glinting faintly in the torchlight. "Stay quiet," he whispered to her, then turned his eyes back on the raider. The raider barked out a laugh, loud enough to stir the others. "Boys," he shouted, "we've got company." The camp stirred, groans and curses rising. Shadows shifted as more men grabbed their weapons. The human cursed under his breath. His chance for stealth was gone. He turned sharply, running toward the trees. The raider lunged after him, torch swinging wildly. The little girl's eyes widened in terror. She scrambled up from behind the log. "Human!" she cried. The human darted past her, grabbing her arm. "Run!" he hissed. Pulling her into the shadows, her small legs struggled to keep up, but fear gave her speed. Behind them, voices roared after them. Boots thundered against the dirt. The firelight flickered brighter as torches spread through the trees. The girl stumbled, but the human scooped her into his arms without slowing. He pushed through the undergrowth, his knife still in his free hand. The girl buried her face against his chest, whispering, "Don't leave my mom. Please don't leave her." His jaw tightened, his steps never faltered. "I won't," he whispered back. Asterisk shouts grew louder behind them. The forest filled with crashing footsteps and angry voices. The human ducked low, weaving between thick trees. His breath sharp but steady. One raider lunged from the side. Swinging a blade, the human twisted, his knife flashing, steel met steel with a sharp ring. Sparks flew in the dark. The human shoved hard, kicking the man back into the brush. The girl screamed softly, clinging tighter. "They'll kill us, not." "If I kill them first," the human muttered, his eyes narrowed. He pushed deeper into the forest. But the raiders did not give up. They spread wide, their torches casting cruel light, the night filled with the sound of their hunt. The human knew. He could know. He ducked into a hollow space between rocks, setting the girl down gently. "Stay here," he whispered. "Do not move until I come back." Her eyes widened, tears shining. "No, don't leave me." He gripped her shoulders firmly, looking into her glowing eyes. "I will come back," he promised. "But if they find you, it will all be over. Do you understand?" Her lips trembled, but she nodded. He pressed her deeper into the shadows, then rose silently, knife ready. Voices grew nearer. Flames flickered between the trees. The raiders were close, too close. The human slipped out of the hollow, his body moving like a shadow, his eyes sharp, his breath calm. He would draw them away. He would keep them from finding her, but deep inside, one truth burned. He had been seen. He had been caught in the act, And now, there was no turning back. Asterisk the human crouched low in the shadows. His chest rose and fell steadily. The sound of raiders shouting echoed through the forest, torches swinging wildly as they searched the trees. He knew he had only moments before they would find the girl's hiding place. His mind raced. He could not keep running forever, not with the child, and not with her mother still locked in the cage. If he escaped now, leaving the mother behind, the girl would never forgive him, and truthfully, he could not forgive himself either. He scanned the camp from the ridge above. The fire burned low, but the cages were still visible. The alien mother lay slumped forward, her head pressed against the bars. She was still alive, but weaker than before. The sight tightened his chest. If he delayed much longer, she would not survive the night. He pulled the little girl close to him. She was shaking, her eyes wide with fear. "Listen to me," he whispered. "I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" She sniffled, wiping her tears with her sleeve. I can try." "Good," he said firmly. "Because I have a plan." Her eyes widened, hope flickering like a tiny flame. "You will save her." "Yes," he said, his voice steady, "but I need your help." The girl blinked in surprise. "My help?" He nodded. "They don't notice you. You're small, quiet, and fast. If you can distract them, I can free her." Her lips trembled, but what if they catch me?" "They won't," he said quickly. "I'll be watching you the whole time, and I will never let them hurt you." His words were heavy with promise, and though the fear stayed in her eyes, she nodded slowly. The humans studied the camp again. The raiders were scattered, some still searching the forest, some half asleep by the fire. Only 2 men guarded the cages directly. He needed them away, just for a few moments. He handed the girl a small stone. "Throw this into the brush on the far side, make it loud, then hide when they chase the sound." "I'll move in." The girl clutched the stone tightly. Her small body shook, but she nodded. Her glowing eyes looked at him with fragile trust. "Please don't fail," she whispered. "I won't," he said, his jaw set. She crawled through the shadows, her movements small and quiet. The human followed her with his eyes, every muscle in his body ready to move if danger came too close. The girl reached the far side of the camp. She raised the stone high, then hurled it into the brush. The crash of branches echoed loudly. The sound was sharp in the silence of night. The 2 guards jerked up, their eyes narrowing. One cursed. What was that? The other grabbed his blade. Probably an animal. "Come on." Together they moved into the trees, torches swinging. The human's eyes hardened. This was his chance. He sprinted low through the shadows, his knife ready, his boots silent on the dirt. He reached the cage, his heart hammered. The alien mother raised her head weakly. Her tired eyes widened. He pressed his finger to his lips. "Quiet," he whispered. She nodded faintly, her chains rattling softly. He slid the wire into the lock again. This time, his hands were fast. Precise, the metal clicked once, then twice. Finally, the lock snapped open. The door groaned as he pulled it. His arms reached inside. Gently lifting the frail woman, she winced as he broke the chain from her wrists with a hard twist. Her body sagged against him, but she whispered, "My child. Where is she?" "She's safe," he whispered quickly. "But we must move now." He pulled her over his shoulder, her weight light but heavy with weakness. He stepped back into the shadows, his eyes darting toward the forest. Suddenly, a voice roared behind him. "Hey!" One of the raiders had returned. His torchlight spilled across the cage. His eyes widened at the open door. They're escaping. The human cursed under his breath. He bolted toward the trees, carrying the woman. The raiders' shouts stirred the whole camp. Voices rose, weapons clattered, torches flared. The little girl ran from her hiding place, dashing toward them. "Mother!" she cried. Her voice was sharp with joy and fear. The woman raised her head weakly, her lips trembling. "Daughter?" But the reunion was cut short by the sound of boots pounding closer. The human gritted his teeth, his legs pumped harder. His lungs burned, but he did not slow. He carried the woman, grabbed the child's hand, pushed deeper into the forest. Arrows whistled through the air. One struck a tree trunk beside him. Another skimmed past his shoulder. The girl screamed, but kept running, faster. He hissed, "Stay low." The forest became a blur of shadows and firelight. The sound of men chasing grew louder. The human's mind raced. He could not outrun them forever. He needed to lose them. He spotted a narrow ravine up ahead, jagged rocks and thick undergrowth, surrounding it, perfect for hiding. He pulled the girl close, lifting the mother higher, and leaped down the slope. His boots slid on the dirt, but he steadied himself against a rock. They crouched low, breaths heavy. The raiders' voices thundered. Above, find them. Don't let them escape. The girl hugged her mother tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You're free. You're free," she whispered. The mother's hand shook as she stroked her daughter's hair. Her weak smile was filled with pain and love. The human pressed. His back to the stone, his knife still in his hand, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp. He knew this was not over. They had escaped the cage. Yes, but freedom was still far away, and as the shouts of the raiders grew nearer, one thought burned in his mind: he would protect them, no matter the cost. The human pressed his back against the jagged rock. His chest rose and fell as he listened to the shouts above. The raiders' torches moved like fireflies in the darkness. Voices cursing and weapons clattering. They were hunting, and they would not stop until blood was spilled. The alien mother leaned weakly against him, her body trembling from exhaustion. The little girl clung to her, whispering soft words of comfort. Though her own tears still fell, the human looked at them both, and in that moment, he knew he had no choice. He could not keep running, not with them so weak. Sooner or later, the raiders would catch them. His jaw tightened. His hand gripped the knife at his side. "Stay here," he whispered. His voice was calm but heavy. The girl's eyes widened. In fear, "No," she cried, shaking her head. "Don't leave us. They'll kill you." The human knelt down, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Listen to me," he said. "If I don't stop them, it will find us all. This ends tonight." The girl's lips trembled, her glowing eyes filled with tears. She clutched his arm. "But you're only one. There are many of them," he gave. A faint smile, though his eyes were hard. "Sometimes one is enough." The mother lifted her head, her weak voice breaking. "Human. No, you'll die." Her hand shook as she reached for his arm. But he gently placed her hand back on her daughter's. "Protect her," he whispered. He rose silently, his figure a shadow against the night. His heart was steady, every step carried the weight of his promise. He would fight, he would stand. The forest erupted with shouts. Torches flared as the raiders spread wider. One of them spotted movement in the trees. "There, over there," he shouted. The human stepped into the clearing. His knife gleamed faintly in the torchlight. The raiders laughed cruelly. "Look at this fool," one sneered. One man, standing alone, but the human's eyes did not waver. His stance was firm. His voice rang out steady. "You will not touch them again." The raiders paused for a moment, surprised by the calm in his tone. Then their laughter grew louder. "Kill him!" the leader barked. The first man lunged, blade raised high. The human sidestepped, his knife flashing. The raider's scream cut the night as he fell to the dirt. The others hesitated, then rage filled their eyes. They rushed him all at once. The human fought like a storm. His blade moved fast, his fists struck hard. He ducked, twisted, slammed one man into a tree. He spun, slashing at another. Blood sprayed, the air filled with the sound of steel and cries. Asterisk, but there were too many. A blade cut across his arm. Another struck his side. Pain burned. But he did not stop. His eyes stayed fierce. His body refused to fall. Above, the little girl watched in horror. Her mother held her close, whispering weakly, "Don't look, don't look." But the child could not turn away. Her savior, the human, stood alone against the pack. The raiders circled him, bloodied but grinning. "You fight well," their leader mocked. "But you cannot win." The human straightened, his breath heavy, his knife dripped with blood. "I don't need to win," he growled. "I just need to make sure you don't leave here." Asterisk, with a roar. He charged, his blade cut deep, his fists broke bones. He fought with the fury of a man who had nothing to lose and everything to protect. The raiders stumbled back, shocked at his ferocity. But more came, torches blazing. The clearing lit up as if it were day. The human's chest heaved, his arms trembled, his body weakened, yet his eyes still burned with defiance. The leader raised his weapon, sneering, "End him," at that moment. The little girl cried out, her voice sharp, filled with desperation. "Don't hurt him, please, stop." Her cry echoed through the forest like a bell. For a heartbeat, the raiders hesitated. Their eyes flicked toward the sound. The human seized the moment. He lunged at the leader. Their blades clashed, sparks flew. The human drove his knife upward, straight into the man's chest. The leader's eyes widened in shock before he crumpled to the ground. The other raiders froze, staring at their fallen commander. The human staggered, blood dripping down his side. His knees nearly buckled, but he stood tall. His voice rang out through the clearing. "Leave now, or join him." For a long moment, silence filled the night. Then, one by one, the raiders backed away. Their courage broken, their leader dead, their hunt over. They vanished into the darkness, their torches flickering away. The human dropped to one knee, his chest heaving, his vision blurred. The little girl ran to him, throwing her arms around him. "You did it," she sobbed. "You saved us." The alien mother crawled weakly from her hiding place. Her trembling hands touched his shoulder. Tears streaked her bruised face. You stood for us," she whispered. Her voice cracked with awe and gratitude. The human gave a faint smile, his body nearly collapsing. "I told you," he whispered. "I wouldn't leave without her." And as the dawn light touched the sky, the forest fell silent again. The human had stood alone, and for that night, he had one. Asterisk, the forest was quiet again, but the quiet was heavy. It was not the peaceful silence of before, but the silence that came after blood had been spilled. The human knelt on the ground, his chest heaving, his knife still dripping red. His body trembled from pain and exhaustion, yet his eyes remained sharp, watching the shadows in case another raider returned. The little alien girl clung to him, her arms tight around his waist, her small face pressed against him as she sobbed. "You're hurt," she whispered. "Please don't die." He rested a hand on her trembling back, his voice low but steady. "I'm not done yet." The alien mother staggered closer, her body weak, chains still clinking faintly on her bruised wrists. She lowered herself beside him. Her pale blue hands shook as she reached toward his wounds. "You saved us," she whispered. "But you were bleeding too much." The human glanced at her, sweat dripping down his face. "I've had worse," he muttered. But even as he spoke, his legs gave out and he collapsed to one knee. The girl cried out, "No, Akia, you can't fall. You can't leave us." She gripped his hand tightly, refusing to let go. The mother pulled her daughter close, her tired eyes full of sorrow. "He gave us freedom, child," she whispered softly. "But freedom always has a price." The human forced himself upright again. His body screamed in pain. But he clenched his jaw. "We don't stop here," he said. "They'll regroup. They'll come back. We have to move." He looked at the weak mother, then at the frightened girl. And he knew they could not outrun anyone in this condition. He needed shelter, somewhere hidden, somewhere safe. With slow steps, he guided them through the forest, his knife still in his hand. The girl leaned on one side, the mother on the other, together. They moved deeper into the wild, away from the clearing of blood and fire. Dawn light broke through the trees. Painting the world in shades of gold, birds stirred in the branches, and the wind carried the smell of fresh earth, but to them it felt fragile. Like a world that could shatter any moment if the raiders returned. Finally, they reached a cave hidden by thick vines. The human pushed them aside and led the mother and child inside. The place was damp, but safe. The girl sank onto the stone floor. Holding her mother's hand tightly, the human slumped against the wall, his hand pressed against the wound in his side. His breaths were shallow, but his eyes never closed. He watched them as if guarding their lives was more important than his own. The mother looked at him for a long moment. Her lips trembled. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk your life for us? You don't even know our names." The human's voice was hoarse but steady. "Because no one deserves a cage." He turned his gaze to the little girl. "And no child should cry for her mother while the world ignores it." Tears welled in the mother's eyes. She reached out weakly, her hand brushing his arm. "You gave me something I thought was gone," she whispered. "Hope." The girl crawled closer, resting against him. Her tiny voice broke the silence. Can I call you father?" The human blinked, his throat tightening. He looked at the child's glowing eyes, so full of innocence, even after so much pain. Slowly, he nodded. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "If that's what you want." The girl's lips curved into the first true smile she had shown since he met her. She hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around him. "Thank you, Father." The mother's tears spilled down her bruised cheeks. She lowered her head, whispering, "You are part of us now." But even as warmth filled the cave, danger still lingered outside. The human knew the raiders would not forget. He had killed their leader, broken their pride. They would hunt again, and this time they would come stronger. He stared at the mouth of the cave, his hand tightening on his knife. He had paid a price in blood tonight. But he would pay more if needed. Freedom demanded it. Safety demanded it. The mother leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. Her chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths, for the first time in days. She was resting without chains. The girl curled beside her, still holding the human's hand tightly as if afraid he might vanish. The human stayed awake, guarding them. His body was weak, but his spirit burned like fire. He had no family of his own, no place to belong, but tonight, in the silence of the cave, with a child's head resting on his shoulder and a mother's gratitude shining in her eyes, he felt something he had never felt before. Belonging. He whispered to himself, "Whatever comes, I'll be ready." His eyes remained sharp, his heart steady. And so, as dawn brightened into day, the three of them sat together in the cave, broken yet unbroken, chained by neither iron nor fear anymore, but by something stronger: trust. Freedom had come at a price, but it was worth every drop of blood.